This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
CBD is a game changer sweeping the nation. This hemp extract is the natural way to elevate your mood, eliminate aches and pains, reduce anxiety, and keep you sleeping all night long. It can even cut your workout recovery time in half. Get in the game today with 20% off all orders of CBD and lavender products from Lavender Lane, a lavender farm located right here in Milan, Michigan. Just go to lavenderlanemi.com today and enter coupon code Detroit for 20% off your entire order. Guys, look, these amazing products are infused with calming lavender to maximize their effectiveness, meaning your CBD items only take minutes to take effect, which is way quicker than those pills you were about to swallow. On top of it, they are perfect for men and women. Lavender Lane has lab-tested CBD creams, tinctures, and roll-ons that are perfect for any situation, even if you're on the go. Put your health back in your hands by heading over to lavenderlanemi.com and entering coupon code Detroit for 20% off your entire order of CBD and lavender products. What do you have to lose? Your satisfaction is guaranteed or your money back. So if you need lavender gifts for your loved ones or just looking for the natural way to ease your discomfort with CBD, go to lavenderlanemi.com and use coupon code Detroit to unlock these miraculous benefits of CBD and lavender. That's lavenderlanemi.com. And remember, use coupon code DETROIT for 20% off your CBD and lavender products from Michigan's own Lavender Lane.
Is there a sports podcast in Detroit that people are talking about?
Hey, everybody, this is Freddie Cohen of ESPN Radio. When I'm not talking about breaking news or breaking news on ESPN Radio, I'm always a fan and listen to the Detroit Sports Podcast, and so should you.
Welcome, everybody, to the latest edition of Doc and Jock on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. This is John Macaroon. Joining me, my cousin Adam, the Jock Strozinski. Oh, man, always enjoy our conversations. We share a laugh even before we started recording here. Push the record button, and we're going to talk about the Lions, and we're going to talk about the epic beatdown. All the excuses are being made for the University of Michigan. Doc and Jock called it Saturday at 11 a.m., and we told y'all it was going to be a beatdown, and that's what happened. But we're here to break it down. We ain't going anywhere. Cuz, what's happening, my friend?
Man, I am lucky I still have wrists. I haven't cut these bad boys off. After what took place on Thanksgiving, what took place on Saturday, you're lucky I'm alive and kicking and able to do this podcast with you here.
Well,
suicide's a real thing. You know the deal. You're a psychologist.
Man, in the world of Detroit sports, I don't know how we've done this for 6 years. Literally the worst 6-year stretch in Detroit sports, and we've recorded like 1,800 podcasts, and we can't talk about anything positive, only little blurbs. I mean, Michigan has the good success in college basketball. They, Juwan Howard dancing, but then they go out and they play real competition.
Wait, hold on. Can we talk about this real quick?
Yeah.
Because I watched parts of that tournament,
yeah,
and you see, so like I watched most of the Gonzaga game, and I watched parts of the UNC game. So Michigan goes from not even being on the radar, not ranked at all, to catapulting to number 4 in the country, maybe number 5, depending on which poll you're looking at here. But you basically go from not even being in the realm of the solar system to then being like front and center, like circulating the sun, like you're some big shot. And then you play Louisville, who is the Sun, and you can't score a basket. So it blew my mind. I was like, holy cow, this is crazy. But I love it. I do love it. I didn't think Juwan Howard was going to be this good this quick, but it's cool. I love it.
There's talent on the court there. And Juwan Howard, I think, tapped into in that tournament what can be, and that's a good sign. But at the end of the day, I think when you look at basketball, if you can't make a shot and you get out of rhythm, it can go real quick. And as a Spartan fan, if you would have told me, oh, okay, Michigan State's going to play Duke, what's going to happen? I would say, okay, close my eyes. They're going to turn the ball over a lot. There's going to be long scoring droughts. They're going to play like absolute dog crap. And somebody that they could have had on the Michigan State roster on Duke is going to light them up. And what happened? The exact script happened at the Breslin Center. So in the world of Detroit sports, certain things are a fixture. And whenever Michigan State plays a solid team early on, they just look like they don't know how to play basketball. So it's just the way it is. And in the game of basketball, if you're not shooting well and you can't put the ball in the hoop, any team can look like dog crap and look like they don't know what they're doing. And then when you get hot, then you can beat North Carolina and Gonzaga within a tournament. So that's the fun part, I think, about college basketball. In the NBA, people have just turned it off and said, dude, these guys can't shoot. I'm not watching. And that's the end of the day with the NBA. They got to turn that game around. The three-point shot there is just killing the game there. But in Detroit sports, what do you think we're going to talk about to start? The Detroit Lions.
Got to talk Lions, baby. Come on.
Got to talk business. And the Detroit Lions struggled on Thanksgiving, obviously, but it was at least nice to see David Blau come in and not look like a guy that never played football before. He played very well. Unfortunately, as has been the case the entire 2019 season, the Lions just couldn't hold the lead, and the Bears were able to be victorious. And I think at this point in time, as we're recording this, what really frustrated everybody is that Mitchell Trubisky lit you up again, and it's embarrassing at the highest level.
I mean, we did our over under, and I think we're pretty spot on with most of our over under picks on last week's podcast. And yeah, it is frustrating watching a guy like Mitchell Trubisky. Look, I work with a bunch of Bears fans, and we talk about their football team all the time because there's no point talking about the Lions because it's just frustrating for me and causes me to have an aneurysm. But we talk about the Bears constantly, and I've got one guy I work with he's like he's like a Lions fan where he's so hopeful, like, oh, they got a shot to make the playoffs, they're going to do it. And I look at him and I'm like, you do realize who your quarterback is, right? Like, your quarterback is Mitch Trubisky. Like, I get that you might have something with your running backs and you might have something with your wide receivers, and you've got a really, really good defense. I understand all of that. But at the end of the day, the guy who touches the ball 100% of the time on the offense is Mitchell freaking Trubisky. Like, your quarterback is crap. And then he turns around and he's like, yeah, but he just lit you up. And I'm like, that's a fact. I know that's a fact. There's nothing I can do. There's no argument I can say. I can't do anything. I've got nothing. I've got absolutely nothing to come back at you with. But you do have to realize where your quarterback ranks in the pantheon of QBs that are in this league right now. This guy is maybe a top 35, a top 40 quarterback. And this dude just rolled into Ford Field. When I say top 35 or top 40 quarterback, I mean he is falling somewhere between the number of 35 and the number 40 on the QB ranking list. I think Jeff Driscoll at one point was better than Mitch Trubisky this season. Okay, so let that sink in. Your backup quarterback is better than the guy who was starting in Chicago. All right, and he just rolled into Ford Field on his high horse and ripped you a new one. As a Detroit Lions fan, as somebody who supports this garbage every single week, and I watch it and I get frustrated and I want to take my dick and slam it in a dresser drawer just so I can feel something other than rage, I can't handle this anymore. This is absolute trash.
Yeah, it's really tough, but when you look at it and you look at how the season has went, you don't give any saving graces, no passes for the injuries because of the fact that, the team just by and large altogether just hasn't been there. This week alone, you saw the injury report, and finally the defensive line altogether can practice. You don't give any passes or say, look, once Stafford went down, I talked to Jason earlier on the Motor City Sports Rant. Is there any way you can buy that they are technically tanking without saying they're tanking? Would you buy that at all?
I mean, I would hope that was the case, right? Look, we talked about it in the preseason. Matt Stafford goes down, the season's over. You've got nothing. Now, what I will say to that, there's a little bit of a caveat, because I think Jeff Driscoll showed you a little something. I think David Blau showed you a little something for a couple of quarters here during that Thanksgiving Day game. But yeah, if you're an organization, I think you would be out of line to actually be trying to win games right now. Now, that's hard to sell to your players in that locker room, but The best thing for the organization is the tank. Best thing for the organization is to get a top pick, whether it be 1, 2, or 3. You would love to get the first overall pick and then go out there and draft your game changer, or be in a position where somebody sees something that they want and they're willing to trade up with you, and you can still go get the guy that you want to target, as well as get a couple extra pieces. But right now, what's been most frustrating for me, whatever Bob Quinn is doing, whatever Matt Patricia is doing, I'm not seeing anything that you can turn around and say, cool, we can build around this for next year. Or, hey, cool, we've got this. So next year when we hit the ground running, we're going to have a leg up and we're going to be 3 steps ahead of where we should be. That's what we thought going into this year. You know, with the way that defense played at the end of last season, we thought we'd be there this year. And then we thought the big issue was going to be the offense this year. The offense looks great. Like honestly, Bevel's offense looks fantastic. Really and truly, that is not the problem for this team. I'm not saying it's 100%, and I'm not saying it is one of the best offenses of all time, but it's not the problem with this team. It is a very good to average offense that will help you win games in the NFL. The problem with this team is that defense. This defense is killing this team right now, and that's supposed to be Patricia's calling card. And Bob Quinn was supposed to be able to get him the pieces to help out and to build around that. And yet they haven't. So, look, if I'm Bob Quinn, if I'm Matt Patricia, yeah, you bet your ass we're tanking, or at least that's what we're talking about internally between us two. But the rest of the guys, you can't necessarily sell that to them.
Yeah, the tough part is you can't hang your head on nothing, and it just doesn't appear. The biggest drawback to Matt Patricia, it doesn't appear that the defense as a whole works. Do you see any signs? I mean, the entire foundation of what he's preaching doesn't seem like it's going to work in today's NFL.
Dude, did you hear the quotes by Glover Quinn?
I think everybody has been taking shots at the Lions. I think everybody.
But here's the thing: I don't even think it's a shot at him. Now, like, look, Glover Quinn is an interesting case because he played last year underneath Matt Patricia, so he kind of understands what's going on there. On top of that, that's a guy who was well respected in the room when he was here in Detroit. On top of that, he was one of your best defensive players when he was here in Detroit. And this guy right here, look, I'm going to read you the quote. All right. He says, right now they're struggling. It's not a great situation. And it's not a situation where, like, I don't know if they can fight out of it right now, because I don't know if they love and like for Patricia's style makes the players want to fight out of it. So it sounds, and look, he's a guy who's dialed in. He still has guys on this roster that he communicates with. You don't think him and Darius Slay are talking? You don't think that's something that's going on? You don't think Jared Davis isn't calling him up? You don't think any of these guys that he's played with, Ashawn Robinson, you don't think those guys are calling him up and they're not discussing what's going on in that locker room? Because you can bet your ass that they are. So he's dialed in. He has a thumbprint on what's going on in that locker room right now, and it sounds like the guys just don't want to play Patricia's style. And I think that's why you've seen a mass exodus with guys like Quandre Diggs. They don't want to play this style. This style doesn't work. They don't see how it's working. And look, you as a head coach, you've got to be the leader of these grown men, these 53 grown men who make way more money than you and live a much different lifestyle than you. You have to find some way to connect with them. You've got to find some way to be able to sell what you want to them so they go out there and they do it. You know, guys hate Bill Belichick. Guys can't stand Bill Belichick except for one day a year. One day a year, they're like, hey, he's the greatest coach ever. We've got a Super Bowl. Things are fan-freaking-tastic. All right? Matt Patricia doesn't have that cachet. These guys don't necessarily like him or don't necessarily like the scheme that he's running because it's not proven to them. He's not done enough to be able to go in there and strong-arm these players. Look, we've talked about this in the past where your players have to buy in. If you want your players to go out there and run through a wall for you, they've got to buy in on you. Not necessarily your system, but they have to buy into you. Nobody's bought into Patricia. This is now year 2, and nobody's bought into Patricia. What's that tell you?
Well, I also look at it and say that I don't want guys like, a linebacker that's coming in off the practice squad because of injuries and things like that, trying to buy in. At the same time, you traded off Quandre Diggs, maybe because he spoke up, maybe that they know that, look, it's not going to be a 1 and 2 year deal. 1 and 2 year deal where we bring in these guys, it's going to take a little bit of time for everybody to buy in because, look, you got Trey Flowers, you got Devon Kennard, you got Tracy Walker. They're all towing the company line. And look, yeah, the comments from Glover Quinn don't help, but he's not there. And look, it just sounds like sour grapes because, he was near the end of his career. His playing time went down, and the writing was on the wall that his time was up. And in the NFL, it's not like you just get this victory parade when you retire. It's like, okay, the season ends and you're out. And so that's what Jay Billingsley kind of said, too, is that the business of the NFL, it's professional. And Austin Bryant told me that, too. He's like, in college, we rode together. We did everything together. And now in the NFL, it's kind of like it's a real job. You got to show up, do your work, and go home. And so I think the business side of the NFL rubs some people the wrong way, especially when they're not here anymore. But I do think these guys buy in. They just need more talent. And that's where the biggest criticism is that, look, TJ Hawkinson's not there, and he had an injury-plagued first season. I think another guy like a Brian Burns or Ned Oliver would have been much better. And it's Bob Quinn mostly to blame here in that he hasn't given Matt Patricia enough, and the injuries just piled up way too much for the team to be successful. And I do think that, look, see, that's the part that's tough is that, we really don't know exactly what's going on in Allen Park, but when Bob Quinn makes a decision to trade Quandre Diggs, I know he has the cachet to do it. He can just make that move. But when Stafford goes out, you make that move. It just feels like a long-term plan to say, look, we're going to weed out as many toxic people as possible, and we're going to find, as many guys that will buy in as possible. And it may take 3 years. And I do think that Matt Patricia will be back. And I do think that fundamentally, I like the approach of like, hey, this is us. We're the bosses. You got to handle business. You got to go out and execute. The problem is what he's asking them to execute doesn't sound right. Dropping, rushing 3 and dropping back that many players just gives quarterbacks like Haskins, like Trubisky all the time in the world to, pick you apart. And I know that they want to play this thing called complementary football where, the relationship between the rush and the pass is supposed to work together to not allow, points to be scored, to force turnovers and things like that. But Fenham, in terms of our beliefs about Patricia, I just don't like his scheme. I think that it's outdated. I think the Eagles showed everybody how to beat it. And now there's 2 years of film on how to defeat the Lions offense. And I just think that at this point in time, the biggest factor that I wrote about is the Lions can't adapt for whatever reason. If, Patricia wants to zig, then a zag is needed. If a zag is needed, then a zig happens. For whatever reason, everything that should happen isn't. And it's so highly unusual. I think the players buy in. You got a guy
like what's great?
Yeah.
You know what's great? And I'm glad you bring this up and you make this point. If you go to 538.com, right? Go to ESPN, go to 538.com. They did a great job breaking down percentages and what happens with Detroit's defense in the second half and how they find ways to blow games. With 6:40 left in the game against Chicago on Thanksgiving, they had a 77% chance to win that game, and they blew it. And it's just not this game. It's just not this game. Like that's a for sure thing, right? 77% with 6 minutes left. That's like a for sure thing. Yet Detroit figured out a way to stumble over their own feet and blow the game. But again, it's not just this one game. It's multiple games. Their second halves have cost them at least 4 wins. You know what I'm saying? Like, this is a mess right now. Their pass defense is abysmal. It's absolutely atrocious. In the second half, you have guys with passer ratings that jump damn near 10 points. That's insane. Through the air, they're giving up over 7 more touchdowns through week 13. John, that's not good. No. That's absolutely crazy.
Yeah, it's not good, and that's the problem. So we got to ask, do you think that when the time comes, I'm saying that he's coming back. I mean, it makes no sense to blow this out. It makes no logical sense to fire Matt Patricia. I don't believe it's going to happen. Matt Patricia will be the coach because his contract is tied with Bob Quinn's. I don't see Bob Quinn firing his friend. So if it happens, if a drastic change happens, which I don't see happening, I have, on good authority that Matt Patricia is going to be back. But I believe that if they do make a change, then it's Quinn and Patricia together. And then we're going to be 50 because you're going to have to tear it down.
You got to restart all over.
You're at 0. You got to tear it down, bring in new players, new coach, new coordinators, it would be a disaster. So I would say that you bring Patricia back with the playoffs or bust, and Bob Quinn should just stand up there to save face and say, look, yeah, it's been a disaster. I made a lot of mistakes. I got to do better. And next season for Matt, you got to put it on him. You got to say, look, he must make the postseason or probably all of our jobs will be gone. And you got to put it on yourself and you got to make it. And that's just the way it's got to be. You got to, in this line of work, it's a results-oriented business, but you also, it just appears just on how the Lions are acting, it appears like they're coaching for next year. They're losing. Matt Stafford's injury gives them an excuse. They can get a top 5 pick, and they got to hit on it. So at the end of the day, while it's been tough, it's gone by fast, it doesn't really hurt.
But you know what?
It doesn't hurt as much as in seasons past. Do you feel that way?
No, it doesn't, because you have the built-in scapegoat that Stafford went down, so the season's lost. But the thing is, it's not hitting on just that first-round pick. A lot of teams hit on their first-round picks. You got to be able to hit on guys later in the draft. You got to be able to hit on guys
right away
in that second and third day.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you need your third round guy to come in and give you productive snaps. You need your fourth round and your fifth round guy to be rotational guys who can come in and spell a guy or two and then maybe work their way up the roster. You know, it'd be fantastic if you had a seventh round guy do something insane, like, I don't know, make your roster instead of just be brought in for training camp and then get cut right away. But you've got to find guys who are going to contribute to this team in days 2 and 3. Your second and third round pick, those guys should be starting for you. Your fourth and fifth rounders, even your sixth rounders should be rotational guys or depth guys who are giving your starters a spell here and there, and they can give you productive snaps. You know, every good team in this league finds value late in drafts. The Lions seemed totally perplexed by it, totally confused by it. It doesn't make any damn sense. You know, it's been this way with Bob Quinn. It's been this way with Matt Millen. It's been this way with everybody in between both those guys and even before those guys. So it's a constant frustration with these guys at the top bringing in the right players. Now, you're absolutely right. The way this team and the way everything is kind of setting up right now, they are playing for next year. And they're smart for doing it. Like, tip your cap to this organization for realizing, hey, we ain't winning shit this year. Like, so what are we going to do? Let's insulate ourselves and let's plan for next year. Let's play these games close. Let these guys get reps. Let's do things where we're not going to put our stars in bad spots and they're going to get hurt. And it could be a career-ending injury, or it could be a season-long injury that's going to bleed into the next season. So let's not do that. But all that being said, we're just not going to roll over and die. We're going to make these games look relatively interesting, but it doesn't behoove you to win games. You remember last year, I think it was week 12. Maybe it was week 13. They went on and won a game that really destroyed their draft position. You know, you could have had a guy like a Josh Allen, who, if you ask me, is very similar to a dude like Khalil Mack. You know what I'm saying? He's a guy who can play up on the line. He's a guy who can play back in coverage. He's a guy who does a lot of everything, and he has a nose for sniffing out a quarterback. You can't tell me that this defense wouldn't look that much better if you had a guy like Josh Allen. On top of that, I'd have took my clothes off at the ESPN 961 draft party and would have ran around naked with Jeff Risdon. And you love Risdon. Risdon's a great fucking guy. I love Risdon. It'd have been fantastic. My little wiener flopping in the wind. It'd have been spectacular.
So, what do you think next season? Are Patricia and Quinn back together one more year?
Yeah, I mean, the scenario you just laid out, man, they have to be back next year, right?
Yeah, they have to.
And look, like you said, they've got a built-in scapegoat with Stafford going down. I think this is one of those things. What I think you will see is there will be some movement with these coaches, but it's going to be a guy like Pasqualoni who's going to be let go. It won't be Patricia and it won't be Quinn.
Pasqualoni, unfortunately, he's got to be the scapegoat, and he's got to be let go. But at least you're starting to see at least maybe a quarterback that you can keep. I think Driscoll is going to be probably signed somewhere else. I think David Blau can potentially, if he grows, maybe be the guy that can be a backup. But what would you think if the Lions, you know, when you look at what's available in college, you know, there's a couple quarterbacks at the high end. Would you be livid if the first round pick was a quarterback? Would that dictate to you that, okay, all this talk about Stafford coming back is all lies, that they're really seriously worried? Would you be furious if the Lions went quarterback round one?
Matt Stafford's in what, year 14?
Year 11 going into year 12.
No, year 11. I'm sorry. It just feels like 14. Shit.
Yeah, year 11 going into year 12 next year. He's going to be, I think, 31, 32.
How often do quarterbacks play this many years? Like, I know Tom Brady. Tom Brady is like kind of the outlier. The guy's still in fantastic shape and still looks great. And he's up there in age. But how often do quarterbacks play this long without having serious injuries? No, I'd have no problem if they went out and drafted their quarterback for the future. Let him sit behind a guy like Matt Stafford. Let him sit behind a guy like David Blau or Jeff Driscoll, whoever they decide to keep. Let him sit back there for a year and learn, and then insert him. And then, you know what? If you have something like was it Daniel Jones in New York, where he is cut and dry, the best player at quarterback, go ahead and start him. I mean, if he outplays Matt Stafford, who will then be in year 12 of his career, start him. If he outplays him, that's how the league works. It's not like when Ken Holland and Mike Babcock would run the Red Wings and the tie would always go to the veteran. No, man, that's not how this works. If you can play, you play. So no, I have no problem with that whatsoever.
Okay, and I just don't see it, though. I'm not feeling it from Burrows or from Herbert. I think they're okay, but they're not guys that you take in the first round. So this is where Bob Quinn's got to do his work.
You know what?
Find one in the 5th or 6th that you can develop.
Yeah, so
a real one.
I know we'll spend more time on this when the draft rolls around, but right now, as it sits, those two guys might cost the general manager his job.
Yeah, right?
Because I could see those guys going early. This is what makes things really enticing if you're a Lions fan, right? So they're quarterbacks generally get drafted really high. You could see some movement on day one where people want to try to position themselves to get, if the Lions have a first, second, or third round pick, or a first, second, or third overall pick, you could maybe see some guys or some teams jostling around to try to get one of those guys. And I don't think those guys at the next level, I don't know if their skill necessarily translates. I just don't see it. You could see a GM lose his job based on one of those two guys, which is a very, very scary thought.
Yeah, the interesting part, we're going to talk about Michigan next after we show love to the sponsors. But I have to hit on it with you. Man, once Mike Babcock got fired from Toronto, it just seems like everybody and their mama's coming out calling him like the biggest asshole on earth. But here's the thing.
But the thing was, that was discussed when he was here. Like, everybody knew he was a jerk. It just wasn't to that degree.
Yeah, to that degree. I mean,
like making Johan Franzen freak out and lock himself in a closet because it was dark and he was scared.
But at the same time, here's why I think it appealed to Steve Yzerman, who coached the Red Wings. Scotty Bowman. You think Scotty Bowman was sitting around having a tea party with his players? Dude, he put Sergei Fedorov on fucking defense. So, see, it's just a different...
Hey, he speculated about trading Steve Yzerman. He was going to trade him for Daniel Alfredson.
Right, exactly.
So, I mean, Scotty didn't play no games.
But I think with Mike Babcock, what people also are starting to say was he acted like that off the ice. Like he kind of... felt like he was, a guy that had a huge ego, and people were kind of saying that at, baseball games around town, he wouldn't kind of interact, and he kind of would be sheltered and things like that, kind of was a little bit uppity. But it was just a fascinating look at a guy like Mike Babcock, who Mike Commodore hates his guts. Like, he basically has a parade and pops champagne every time that Babcock has a failure. And it was so funny. And then Chris Chelios and then Johan Franzen, everybody coming out going, yeah, Mike Babcock is a tough cookie. And I just don't see a guy like that really finding a place anymore in this league. I think you have to be that way, but also you have to kind of have a sensitive side that you show these players. You can't just be a dickhead. It's just
you don't have to be buddy with every guy that you coach, right?
Yeah,
that's not necessarily how it has to work. But at some point, you got to realize what you're dealing with, and what you're dealing with are human beings. So don't treat them like an animal.
Yeah. Did you read the report that Ken Holland kind of had to tell players that, look, if you don't like it, we'll ship you out of here? He stood up for Mike Babcock, and I'm just fascinated by that and by that loyalty because of the fact that he won cups and he got to the postseason. But, in the last stretch of time, he hasn't been back, and it just wears on players. And I think that message, that arrogance, that way in which he connects with players just wore thin. And, he kind of reminds me personally of Mike Keenan. Mike Keenan was my guy. Like, I always liked Mike Keenan because he
You
just
like those 94 Rangers squad or what, man?
Yeah. He was just like that guy that always looked like he was a dick that you wanted to punch in the face.
A dick.
But he had like 15 jobs. It's like Mike Keenan with the Blues, Mike Keenan with the Jets, Mike Keenan with the this. And I was
Mike
like,
Keenan with the Chicago Blackhawks.
Yeah.
Everywhere.
yeah, I liked Mike Keenan. He just had that like kind of that dickhead hockey coach look that he annoyed everybody, but he would get wins for a certain period of time. You know what I mean? Him and Hitchcock just kind of, they all can form a club together. They should do a podcast. Hitchcock, Mike Keenan, and Mike Babcock should do a podcast and just rip on all the players and say how bitchy they are. That would be great. That'd be at millions of downloads. Just come out and be like, all these athletes coming out nowadays, they're all a bunch of bitches and they can't handle it. And that's why they all suck. Wouldn't that be great? That'd be the greatest podcast.
You need to get a hold of Babs and Hitchcock and bring this up to these guys.
Yeah, Mike, and Ken just bitching about every player and telling stories like, I had this guy and he just would cry.
You know what though? Ken Hitchcock would be stuffing his face with chocolate chip cookies while he's on his podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
You just hear his big ass eating food the whole time.
I just want to hear a story of a player that got called into a room and he made him cry. And I was like, man, I made this guy cry. What a bitch. And oh man, hockey, man. And look, we still go briefly, bro. The Wings are god awful. Why? What the hell, bro? Dude, you seriously, you're really gonna go out there and lose that many games consecutively? It's just, I think they should just rip the cord and rip the scab and fire Blashill and start over.
No, but look at it like this. Look, we just talked about the Lions tanking, right?
Yeah.
So the Red Wings can tank too.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Let the season get really out of hand. Like it's out of hand right now, but let it get really, really bad.
Yeah, just lose really bad. But
yeah,
I mean, Steve Yzerman basically this year has free reins to do whatever. Nobody's saying, God, this is awful. They're just like, yeah, the Wings suck. Blashill, we'll wait for him to get fired. And he's like literally got a free year to just sit and watch. In sports, I mean, do you really get that? A free year to evaluate? I mean, you could evaluate it from afar and said, yeah, this is garbage. Make some more moves. Play Zadina. The move that obviously that trade he made, for Fabry, I think is great. I think he's a great player. He can put the puck in the net, but it just hasn't translated. And guys like Dylan Larkin are getting pissed off and slamming the sticks, and it sucks to lose, game in, game out. But it just
you don't like losing. You definitely don't like losing this many games.
Yeah, no doubt about
it. You don't. So it becomes a real tough sell.
Yeah, real tough. No doubt about it. But just from afar, the Wings, man, no buzz, no nothing. And it's just a free year. It's crazy. A whole another year is going to go by. Maybe you can just say blow out Blashill, blow out Jimmy Howard, and Bernier. Just start with those three guys, and you might have an opportunity next year to, right the ship. But we'll see as we peek more into the season as probably the losing continues. Well, cuz the reason why we are able to keep the lights on here in Sterling Heights, the reason why the microphones stay hot and we can record podcasts each and every single day is because of great sponsors. And the two sponsors of this week's podcast are the Motor City Pawnbrokers and the Flick Chat application. The Motor City Pawnbrokers are the one-stop pawn shop when you're in need of quality brand name new and pre-owned merchandise with locations in Detroit, Ferndale, Roseville, and Warren. Their mission is to deliver exceptional value. So today, go online and visit MotorCityPawnbrokers.com. That's MotorCityPawnbrokers.com to find out about all the great deals and happenings at one of the fine sponsors of this podcast, the Motor City Pawnbrokers. If you've enjoyed or you disagree with anything at all that we've said, if you like or disagree or you think that Adam and I are crazy and that you're all
hate me, let me know.
Yes, join the Flick Chat application. It's easy. All you got to do, the Flick Chat application is available at your favorite app store, whether it be Google Play or the Apple Store. All you got to do is enter all lowercase DSP, and you're in right away. Detroit Sports' newest headquarters. And what is Flick Chat, you ask? Well, real simple. It's a large group chat application, kind of like a forum via your telephone. You can create topics. You can engage in debates. If you're a fan of professional wrestling, then you can get in there and create a topic and engage with the supporters and the hosts here at the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. And if you're a fan of our platform, then you can listen to all the podcasts that we air right there via Flick. It's a great application. It's growing every single day. Flick Chat. Make sure you join today. Detroit Sports' newest headquarters. Join today. All right, cuz it got out of hand pretty quickly. I mean, it was kind of reminiscent of the Michigan State game, but in reverse. Michigan got out to the lead, not 14-0 like we said before the game. They scored the first touchdown. Then once Ohio State got into gear, it was a wrap.
Let me tell you about a funny moment I had about that exact situation right there.
Yes.
So I don't want you to go too far down the wormhole. Since we're right here, I'd like to just tackle this really quick because I think you'll find some humor in it. So Saturday morning, you called me. I was at the gym. I was working out, just trying to get a quick one in before the game started. I ended up going over to my friend's house to help take care of some plumbing. So TV's on in the living room, nice big screen TV, probably 65-incher. And game's pumping and blazing, and it's really loud. And I'm working underneath the sink trying to replace some plumbing. And as Michigan's kind of matriculating the ball down the field, I stop. I got a P-trap in one hand and I've got a wrench in the other. And I'm sitting here in stunned amazement as Michigan is just working this ball down Ohio State's throat. And then they score. And I'm like 3 seconds away from slamming this P-trap on the floor like it's a football, spiking it between my legs, and I've got one arm with the wrench going up in the air like I'm fist pumping. And I looked at myself. I caught a reflection of myself in a mirror, and I was like, oh, wait. Like, what are you doing? Like, you're buying into this. Like, this is what they want. Don't buy into this. This game's going to change very, very quickly. And sure enough, it changed very, very, very quickly. Dude. But for a brief moment, I bought into the hype, and I even allowed myself to say out loud, it's going to be different this game. It's going to be What are you doing? What are you doing? What an idiot I am.
Bro, different. Ohio State's just on another level. How mad can you really be? Because I know what should anger people is the collective body of work of Jim Harbaugh and the fact that you haven't defeated your rival in 5 years and the fact that the last 2 years you got spanked. It wasn't even competitive. So I understand that. But at the end of the day, Ohio State, we told you. I mean, it's not news. I mean, it was going to take likely a miracle for the Wolverines to stay in this game. So I don't know why Michigan fans are upset at the game because, look, J.K. Dobbins is better than anybody you got. Justin Fields is better than anybody you got.
But here's the thing, right? And this is why I think Michigan fans should be upset. So who is Ryan Day? Like, who is he?
He said watch from Urban Meyer. We don't think he observed anything and learned?
I get it. No, I get it. I understand it. But who is he? He's a first-year head coach. He took over for Urban Meyer when Urban got suspended because he was allowing his other coaches to smack women around. So, like, I get what his lineage is, and I get what he does. But, like, really, who was he? He was an offensive coordinator for Urban Meyer. Then Urban dips out because the heat's about to get hot and things are about to come crumbling down. And, I got health problems. I gotta take a sabbatical. I've got to leave. It's what Urban does everywhere he goes. Look at Florida. Look at Utah. Look at here. It's what he does. That's his calling card. Okay, no big deal. So Urban's dipping out before the heat gets too hot and before the pressure comes down and the police figure out what just happened. And next thing you know, the NCAA is breathing down his neck and they've got flashlights up his ass because they're looking around every nook and cranny just so they can slap him on the wrist. Like, I get that, right? So Ryan Day takes over. Who is Ryan Day? Offensive coordinator for Urban Meyer, had essentially 3 games where he was the head coach at Ohio State. Seems like the logical choice. Great. He's a first-year head coach. He has no prior head coaching experience besides those 3 games that he filled in for Jim Harbaugh or for Urban Meyer. Who is Justin Fields? Justin Fields is a graduate transfer, or he's a portal transfer from Georgia. He was a guy who lost his job to Jake Fromm, comes into Ohio State year 1, has to learn an entire new system, and he's able to do what he does in this game. So this is why Michigan fans should be upset, because you had your transfer in Shea Patterson, who was under year 2 of Jim Harbaugh, who Jim Harbaugh in year 5 still can't get it figured out. You've got a brand new guy who this is his first head coaching opportunity at this level with a quarterback who made you look ridiculous, who just transferred in earlier this year, and they embarrassed you for 4 freaking quarters. That's why Michigan fans should be upset. I get what you're saying about talent disparity. I get it. Their running back's better than Michigan's running back. I understand that. Their offensive line, better than Michigan's offensive line. Their defense, better than Michigan's. Cool, bro. I get it. I understand it. But at some point, that all falls on your head coach. Your head coach goes out and recruits these players. If you mean to tell me that your 5-star guys or your 4-star guys can't dial it up for this game, but their 3, 4, and 5-star guys can all dial it up to play the games of their life, that falls back on you as the head coach. You got to do a better job.
Okay.
So Michigan fans should be pissed. You should be upset about what you've seen on Saturday. You need to be annoyed. You need to be bent out of shape. I mean, because if it wasn't this year, then when does Harbaugh figure it out? Like when? I don't know. I don't have this answer.
I think it's too far gone. Ohio State's train is like, outside of a scandal, Ryan Day leaving, that train is right now hot, and they got all the players and the talent. If you're a talented individual, you're going to Ohio State. You're not going to Michigan. Forget that. It's just the way it is. And I think that's where, and that was my conclusion after the game, is Michigan stuck because of the fact he's too good to let go, but he's not good enough to win. So this is the worst case scenario for the University of Michigan that you can have. You got a 9-10 win coach, which is okay to some, makes a lot of money, a guy that the fans like, and a guy that by and large, embodies what a lot of people want to be in terms of success and what he does against lower level talent. But then you have this certain segment that says, are we ever going to be Alabama? Are we ever going to be Clemson? Are we ever going to win a trophy? And those people are sitting there going, dude, we want something more tangible. We want higher expectations. But unfortunately, you got national media like Mike Greenberg going out and saying, look, know your role and accept 9 wins. So it's really the worst possible position because guess what? Rinse, repeat. It's all going to happen again next year. You're going to have a boring, easy schedule. You're going to play tough games, and you're going to lose 2 or 3 of them. That's just the way it's going to be, and you're going to get your ass handed to you in Ohio State. Get ready for it. I mean, start the countdown clock. We might just do it. It's right now on Saturday. I might throw out a tweet. You're 51 weeks away from your next ass whooping from Ohio State, and that's just the way it's going to be. And that's the tough part because literally there will be no movement. Jim Harbaugh will be there, and you're just hoping for that one special year. Because and the point that I agree with from Mike Greenberg was, since 1940, you've only had 1 share of a national title. That's all you've had. So all you're hoping for is that one magical year where everything comes together. You think a first-year quarterback in Dylan McCaffrey is going to come in and just light it up? Please. He's going to have some struggles. He's going to have his challenges, and there's going to be probably some issues between him and Milton. So this is the worst position for Michigan to be in, which is stuck.
I agree with you 100%, man. You're absolutely right. They are stuck because what do? Who's the guy you go out there and get? Now, if you ask me, I don't have a problem with firing him. You make way too much money and you haven't done the job that you were brought here to do. And in my estimation, the job that you were brought here to do was beat your rivals, which includes Ohio State, which you haven't been able to do at all. Go to the Big Ten championship game. Haven't been able to do that either. And make this team relative for the national championship, for the playoffs. And you haven't been able to do that either. So you're missing on a lot of criteria that you're getting paid a boatload of money for. So what do? I would promote nobody from this staff. This staff, if you ask me, is trash. Now, I like what Gaddis was able to get done later half of the year. And I understand that there were some growing pains early on that might have cost you a game against Penn State. I get that. Might have cost you a game against Wisconsin. I don't necessarily buy that because they didn't start on time for that game. But what I would do, you got to do sometimes what you got to do. You remember Bo Schembechler wasn't a Michigan man, and I use finger quotes for that. Bo Schembechler was an Ohio State guy. Go back to Ohio State. Why not go get a guy like Alex Grinch, who was the defensive coordinator under Urban Meyer? So he has all those tricks up his sleeve. He's now the defensive coordinator and the safeties coach at Oklahoma. Oklahoma's having a pretty decent season. Go get a guy like this. Make him your head coach. Why the hell not? What's it hurt? You sure as hell don't have to pay him $7-8 million like Harbaugh's making. See what the hell happens. What's the worst? Honestly, what is the worst that can happen? You're not even relevant anymore. You're not. You can't tell me that you are. Cool. You might finish in the top 15 again. But great, you're going to go play at another Fleabag bowl game that nobody gives a shit about, and you'll probably get housed to it by a team like, I don't know, Florida or UCF or, I don't know, some other Southern school. What the hell does it matter? It doesn't. Go get somebody else. Go back to Ohio State. Get somebody from their coaching tree. Go to Urban Meyer's coaching. You know what? I don't even care. I'd make a deal with the devil. I'd go get Urban Meyer. We've talked about that before. We've tweeted about it. I'd make a deal with the devil. I don't give a shit. You know what I want right now? I want a national championship. I don't care if I've got to vacate it in 5 freaking years. Do you know why? Because I got to celebrate 5 years ago winning a national championship with people who are criminals. I don't care that the team robbed an old lady at a liquor store. Doesn't matter to me, bro. I don't care. I'm starved for success at this point. I just want to win. I want to be nationally relevant again. Michigan hasn't been nationally relevant since 1997. Let that sink in, guys. That's like 22 years ago. It's insane.
Tough, man. Tough all the way around. I think Michigan fans are split. You know, you got those that say, well, it ain't so bad. You know, they got a winning record. They do defeat their rivals, but they don't defeat the rival.
Man.
It's not.
So here's the thing. This is what I don't get about Michigan fans, right? So when you had Lloyd Carr here, 9-3 wasn't good enough. You wanted more, you know? So you forced him out, and they tried to get Les Miles, and there was a whole kerfuffle with Les Miles coming in. And I think we all agree it might have been the right hire to go get Les Miles. He really wanted the job. He was on a the offensive coordinator, the athletic director was on a boat, so there was some issues there. LSU holds a gun to Les Miles' head, forces him to sign an extension. So now you lose Les Miles. Now you're in this really weird spot where you know Lloyd Carr is going away. He didn't like Les Miles because there was issues with them from the past when they were under Bo Schembechler and on his staff. And so now what are you going to do? You know what? Let's reinvent the wheel. There's this whole thing going on with this new spread offense. You know, we're a grounded pound team. Let's switch it up. Let's go get this guy, this Richard Rodriguez. Brings in his wife with her sweet glitter jeans, and he starts singing Josh Corbin songs and pisses everybody off. Everybody's pissed. So he gets, 3 years? And then next thing you know, he's out the freaking door. All right. But we're going to bring in Brady Hoke, who was a hot freaking mess as a head coach. But you know what? He got you to a Sugar Bowl. And you got a Sugar Bowl victory with Rich Rod's guys. I mean, everybody wants to talk about how Brady Hoke won you that, but that was actually Rich Rod's guys. So Rich Rod might have had something figured out here, but you were just a little bit too impatient and you wanted him out the door because he did things a little bit different because he's one of them Southern guys. He's not like everybody else from the Midwest. He just doesn't kind of play right with everybody. But it's cool. We got Brady here. Brady's going to fix things. Brady Hoke was an idiot. So now you go out and you get Jim Harbaugh, and it just isn't working, man. It just isn't working. You basically have Lloyd Carr 2.0. So if it wasn't good enough for you when you have a guy who won you a national championship, and I don't give a hell who you are, all right? I don't care. That 97 Michigan team was better than that Nebraska team. Michigan is the national champion that year. They split that national championship because Tom Osborne was on his way out the freaking door. So don't sell me that shit. All right. So you have a national championship coach in Lloyd Carr. All right. But 9-3 is not good enough. You got a guy right now who hasn't been able to beat Ohio State in 5 tries. All right. And he gets embarrassed every time he plays them. You mean to tell me 9-3 is still good enough? Who are you people? Who are you? I'd like to meet you so I can slap you in the face. I don't know who you are. You're disgusting.
It's tough times, man. Tough times all the way around for Michigan because of what do you do next? And you just got to kind of hope that one of these years things can happen and you take what you can get. And hopefully, one of these years you eventually break through. I think that's the thing is that the biggest takeaway is you have to lower your expectations. Just one Big Ten title, one maybe run at the national title and then move on.
Well, I'd like to have at least one.
Yeah.
But I have none right now. I'd like to beat Ohio State at least one time. Hasn't happened. Hasn't happened in what, 8 tries? That's not good. Look, we both agree Jim Harbaugh is not going anywhere, right? You've laid out the scenario that he's just too good, but he just happens to be a little bit too bad for them to really get over the hump. But he's too good for you to actually blow him out of here. Who would you fire from this coaching staff? Because right now, the way I see it,
Don Brown. Right away. He should have been fired already.
Brown's defense has been exploited, and he's not the wizard that everybody thought he was 2 years ago. So if you ask me, he's the one who's got to go, man. I just, sorry, Don Brown. Like, go be a head coach at some, I don't know, lower Division I school or maybe even a Division II school, but it's not working here. It just isn't. And I like his fire. I like his tenacity. I like him as a person, but what he's running just isn't working.
Great podcast recording, sir. Always enjoy the hour I get to spend talking to you, kind of like our Detroit sports therapy for the last few years because of how bad it's been. But we'll be here. Just like you can count on the Detroit teams to blow, you can always count on the Detroit Sports Podcast to deliver great podcasts, and especially Doc and Jock. Every single Thursday we deliver, we bring the goods, and it's been a fun ride, and only getting bigger, badder, and more ferocious as each year goes on, because great stuff. Always enjoy the conversation.
Absolutely, sir. It was a good time this week. Thanks for my therapy session.
Yes, sir. You just downloaded the latest edition of the Doc and Jock Podcast.
This was locker room talk.
Second deck.
Sorry, Detroit. Didn't quite work out.
And all I can say is Detroit Sports Podcast scores.
I hear voices in my head. They counsel me. They understand. They talk to me.